Hey everybody, today I'm going to teach you everything I've ever learned about cylinder head porting. I've had great results. On stock cylinder heads I hit over 300 CFM, which supports 600 horsepower. I'm going to go over tools, techniques, and even port molding. So skip around. I'm sure you're going to find something good.
Alright, cool. So let's talk about some tools first. I've got a variety of different carbide bits here. I like the finer cut versions. Sometimes they clog up with aluminum, so what I'll do is dip these things in like transmission fluid first, and then start the shaping and grinding process, and the aluminum chunks don't stick to the teeth as much. Yeah, I've seen people use these, and I think it's good when you're removing little bits of aluminum, but these things grab too much for me and the way I do things, so I don't know. I have a lot better luck with the large rounded one and then the smaller ones. Once we get most of the metal removed, I like to have 60 or 40 grit rolls. If you do research and do some reading on keeping fuel suspended in the intake ports, abrasive port is more desirable than like a mirror finish. I think not too many people would disagree with that, as long as you're running air and fuel through the intake port. So I like 40 and 60 grit rolls. These are 3/8, and those are good for getting around the valve stem bosses. And then these are, I believe these are 1/2 inch size. But again, good all around. But you'll need both of them to get into the tight places. This is a Harbor Freight drill or die grinder, and it spins for me too fast. And especially with these bigger bits, if you start to get the longer shafts, these things will start like wobbling and vibrating and going all over the place. So I got this from off Amazon. It's a variable speed plug-in doodad, and so I'll plug this into the wall outlet over there, and then I'll plug the die grinder into this, and then I can set how fast I want or how much juice pretty much goes to this, and then I can modify my speed, because this is just a on-off switch. There's no variable speed on that. I have an extra long hose again from Amazon, and I hook that to my shop vac, and then I'll run a coolant radiator hose, so I can force this into the intake holes, and then I can suck all the aluminum or metal, cast iron that I'm grinding out, and it all goes into the garbage versus all over my shop and in my teeth and hair. Earplugs, of course, and then face protection, excellent. And these are the two, and obviously some gloves, because the vibration from that grinder kind of gets fatiguing. Little guy here. So when I install this hose into my shop vac, I've drilled a hole in it as well, and you'll see that when we actually get into this. But I have a tiny light that I turn on, and then I'll actually insert it through that piece like so. So when I put the vacuum into the port, I can have light going into that port, and it shows through the other side. So that's very helpful as well. Another good tool that I like to use is silicone RTV. I mix up one of these once. Usually I do it before I start porting and then after, and that way I can get a good idea of what I've done and what needs to be done. Now this is a stock LS1 or cathedral port, and you can see the valve seat and how there's a ridge line from the port itself to the valve seat. And so this is a cathedral port that I ported myself, and so you can see that while there's a little bit of, whoops, let's look at the one I'm talking about. So you can see as there's a little bit of like flashing here, there's not a step or any type of transition error as we see in the stock. You can see it's blended in. So, and on top you can look at the valve guide boss, how thick that is versus the valve guide boss on this one. And then I went on, which would be the long side, I went ahead and push the wall out just a little bit over here, and then raise the roof as well, just a little bit on there. Depending on what you're looking for performance out of your engine, the how you shape these can be a large factor. And you can see the stock versus the modified. It's kind of hard to see because they are dirty. I take the molds right out of the ports before I touch them, before they get cleaned. So anyway, we've got these ports here. We've got the LSX, or L76 rectangular port mold, and as well the LSX port molds. I also took an LT, the new direct injection mold on that as well. And so as you're getting into this, and I had nobody to teach me how to do this, so I went ahead and just read a ton of books on head porting, and we've got the LSX, the LSX is here, and then the rectangular port is here, and you can see the generous size of what would be called the long side on the transition here as it moves down. So in my mind, I'm not looking to make the ports any bigger, but when I do try to port heads, I try to focus just a little bit on this and have the long side here pushed out just a hair, you know what I mean, and then raise the roof just a little bit. But my number one concern is the throat, and you can see right from the factory, the LSX ports, the throat is super close to the valve seat itself. So I mean, there is some, you could improve these heads a little bit with probably a cartridge roll and bring that port out to the valve seat. Here's the L76. I actually ported this one, and you can see how the port itself transitions into the valve seat. So there's no restriction, or the throat is opened to that seat. Okay, great. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and make a port mold after I go ahead and get the port done on the set of heads over there. And I'll use the LSX idea as kind of a guide. And we'll take the stock cathedral port, put it next to the LSX, and you can see there's a big difference, and I'm not going to try to make this stock port as big as this, but just the way that it transitions and flows, I just want to make sure I'm mimicking the smooth bends and then the again, the throat work to make sure the port blends into that valve seat as efficiently as possible. So GM engineers at this point, even though I don't want to admit it, probably know more about head flow than I do. So I'm going to go ahead and use this as my kind of guiding light. So anyway, sounds like my cat wants to get in on the show too. So right, okay, Penelope, we got it. So good point. All right, I'll catch you guys in a minute. Hey everybody, one quick thing. When I say like long side and short side, I'm probably not using the exact terminology, so I want to clarify that real quick before I get too many posts saying I'm using it incorrectly. So when I say this side, this is the cylinder wall side. So if we were to flip this thing upside down on an LS engine, right, and we were looking at the cylinder head and the cylinder, like the piston would be here, right? And so the cylinder wall side is this side. So if we rotate this over for the mold, this cylinder wall side is the side that I like to put a bit more effort into. So just so we can be 100% clear and I can use the correct terminology. Cylinder wall side, not the cylinder wall side. Okay? All right, cool. So let's get on to it. All right, so you can see where the 60 grit is just kind of starting to score the surface. I like to get an idea of what the port looks like, because sometimes even after a cleaning from the machine shop, there's carbon or weird stuff left in there. So as you can get an idea, we've got like a casting line in here, and then the throat is the transition here from the port itself to the valve seat. Okay, so I got to be real careful. These valve seats have had a 3-angle valve job on them already, and so I don't want to bang into this and ruin the finish that's already on there. But kind of risky, but you know, oh well, we'll figure it out. Here's the boss for the valve guides, right, and valve stem boss, and we can clean this up, and you'll see that there's a step in here too that runs from the port into like the valve boss. Let's see if I can get a light on that. Yeah, you can see it a lot better. Don't want to get rid of that step. That step is important. It's in the LSX heads as well. So again, GM put that there for a reason. And other books I've read say that that increases torque due to the increase in atomization. So as the fuel, if the fuel does turn into droplets and attaches itself to the cylinder wall, it'll hit this ridge and shear or drip, and then the circular airflow picks it back up and reatomizes it. So that's the theory or whatever, but the only thing that really matters is the dyno, and then the only real dyno is the racetrack. So but that has been proven to increase torque. So awesome. All right, so we'll just keep on doing this and see what we can get to. All right, so let's take a look here. After a little bit of work, you can see in here, I like put the flashlight in here, and we'll talk through it a little bit. So this bowl here, if you look at the valve seat, right, and if you look, you can look, like take a straight line from the valve seat back to the roof, you can see that there's no material that's impeding, or if you look at my finger, like the port wall isn't kicked out, right? Now the port wall is receded back, so when the air comes in from this side over here, sure, right, comes down this wall, now it can fill this volume, right, that is the same diameter as the valve seat. So this port wall has been pushed back to the diameter of the valve seat, right? So there's no step from the wall to the seat, and the volume inside that port, while increased a little bit, in other words, I pushed the wall backwards, it is in line with the valve seat. Okay? And so as you look in here, I didn't go too far back, but I did blend this wall into the port floor here. Let's see if I can get something smaller to point with. So then the wall here has been blended up to the port wall. I did take a sandpaper roll and run around the what would be the short side radius of the port itself. Okay, and I did follow it back. I did a little bit of work on the valve guide, just kind of sanded her down a bit, but then here's the cylinder wall side roof, and I did put some work into that, not a ton, but I did put work into it, and the cylinder wall side, I did push that out just a hair. Now, not a ton, and not enough to make any real measurable like volume changes, but just the transition. So if you take your finger and you pretend that your airflow coming out, my lights just went out. That's interesting. So if you pretend your airflow and you're coming down this port, you would want to transition smoothly into this area, so when the valve opens, you can go straight into the cylinder, right? So when you're porting, just think about the air. You know, think about going to a like a sporting event, like an arena, Like I went to the Joe Louis Arena and watched the Wings play a while back, and when all the people were stuffed into that long hallway, you can't really go anywhere other than where the masses are going. And so if you were to walk straight into the wall, right, like air does, air crashes into the wall and it doesn't know to turn left or right. So since air is running into this wall over here, make it a little bit bigger. So therefore more air molecules can actually pass on this side, because that's the wall it's running into. So the example of the Joe Louis Arena is if we were all just walking straight out and couldn't see in front of us, we'd crash into the wall too if the wall or the tunnel took a left turn. Well, if somebody were to make that left turn wider, you could fit more people through that same turn in the same amount of time if that wall was pushed out wider. And that's what we've done here. We've pushed this wall out wider just a little bit and smoothed the transition from the port wall into the bowl itself so it would match the valve seat diameter. Just cleaned up the other side a little bit. Again, just the transition that comes from the port wall into the valve seat, just making everything as smooth as possible. These heads are really great to begin with, the LS heads, cathedrals, and the rectangular ports, but you know, porting always produces good results if you take your time, look at some good pictures, get some good books. And I'll post the books and the tools that I've used in the description. So, well, at this point, I'm going to give her one last look, and then we'll move on to making a port mold and see if I've done as good as the time before. So, catch you in a minute. Alright, so you can see inside here. Let's see if I can get the camera a little bit better in there. But you can see that bump is gone, and you can see where the threads show through on those rocker arm studs. Alright, so when we do install our rocker arm studs, we'll put some thread sealant on there to make sure there's no vacuum leaks or any kind of weird business happening with that. But just took the small 40 grit paper roll and roughed it in, and then I went with the 60 grit half-inch size paper roll, and again, I'm not reshaping the port, I'm just clearing out the bumps and spots, still keeping a nice rough finish, and so the whatever fuel droplets get in there won't stick to the wall, and hopefully as the cool air blows by it will pick up the fuel droplets and reatomize itself if that does occur. So I'll take one more look from the other side, and if there's any touch-ups needed, great. If not, we'll move right on to making those silicone molds. Alright, so I did go back in, touch up a couple things, and I took a little bit more of the valve stem guide boss down a little bit and just kind of smoothed everything in. I did find out where I stuck my finger in there and felt back to where the rocker stud boss was. It was kind of, there was still a little bit of a bump left in there, so I knocked that out and then just blended everything together as best I could without enlarging the port too much. So yeah, there we go. I think it's ready for molding, so let's get to that. Alright, so let's get to some mold making. This is silicone RTV part A and B from Tap Plastics. I'll put a link up to where I get the stuff. And there's enough here to do like 3 ports, but I'm only going to do 1 port today, and this has been in my garage for almost a year, so I just want to use it and get it out of here, if you know what I'm saying. So this is a good opportunity to get this stuff out of here and do something cool. Alright, so when you mix the stuff up, don't chop it up because you'll add air into the mixture. You'll want to stir it around and continue to stir as you mix things in. And then again, try not to add bubbles to it because that just ruins the integrity of this stuff. You can mix this all in one like I just did, or You can weigh it out. If you've got a scale, you can use like half of it. Obviously half and half of the product. Okay, so they recommend transferring this fluid into a container, and you have a hole in the bottom of it. So when the fluid comes out, it actually gets rid of its own air bubbles. So I'm going to go ahead and punch a hole in the bottom of this. Okay, so this port over here is the one we're going to be pouring the fluid in. So I've got a valve here. On the other side, what I'll do is put a zip tie around that valve so it doesn't come out, because there is weight to this silicone RTV. Okay. What we'll do is, valves in, I'll use this high performance piece of tooling. Set the cylinder head up so I can pour the mixture straight into this intake port. Okay. What I'll do is hard to see this, so let's bring it back just a bit. Alright, so I'm just going to stir this as it goes in. And then it should fall out of that little hole into the intake port. You can see it going in, I'm sure. Just going to make sure the intake valve is closed. Again, double check, make sure my zip tie is tight. I'll move this over. You can see how it's drawn in, the RTV, and filling right up. Okay, that'll do that. And we'll bring this up to level. So we get the port, the entire port filled in. So this stuff is awesome. Like after you get through with it, after I've made like port molds like this here, I have taken like a Mustang emblem and made a mold of a Mustang emblem and gave it to my daughter. So she had like this silicone Mustang emblem she'd run around the house with and play with. So anyways, this stuff's really cool and fun. Try not to get it in the threads like I did, but yeah, so here we'll just wait. I'll leave it overnight and it should seal up right, and we should have a really nice intake port mold tomorrow morning. Alright, so here's the day after and what the silicone looks like after it dries. And if we look down here, it looks like my zip tie wasn't tight enough, so some of the silicone leaked out past the valve. So what I did was I put two zip ties on there and tightened them down as hard as I could. Also, I had to tape off this piece, the rocker arm stud location, because when I ported the cylinder wall and it had that rocker arm stud boss inside the intake runner, that created a little hole, so some of the fluid or the silicone came out that way. So just grabbed some tape and taped it off with a little bit of paper towel. It'll be a pain to clean out, but oh well. So this is some of the stuff my daughter and I made with the extra silicone. You can see there's a ton of it left over in the 1 pound size. So, you know, we've got little bears that we're making molds of, and we just cut out a piece and I tried to make like an emblem mold. Bottom line is this is pretty fun, so if you can, involve your kids, because there'll be extra silicone everywhere anyway, so may as well have some fun with it. Okay, so now the extraction process to get the silicone out of the cylinder head is, this is obviously the intake port, like the intake manifold side, and this is the, you know, valve side or cylinder side. The mold has to come out this valve. You know, you pull the valve out and then you put pressure on the back side of this mold and then pull through here. So have a helper because it's very important, and use a full can of silicone spray, and I'll show you how we do that in just a second. So let me get this thing set up and we'll go from there. Alright, so after you work this back and forth and then push with your thumb and mess with this, the whole mold will break loose. It won't come out very easy, but you can see how there is movement in here. So then just load it with this silicone. I mean, just load it up. Silicone? Yeah, silicone spray. Yep. Alright, so you can see underneath too. Let me get some light under there. You can take the your screwdriver and kind of get behind it, and you see how it's almost coming out. So what'll happen is, if you've got an extra person to help, if you do this pull a little bit and not rock too hard on the 3-angle valve job and have somebody push from the top, so come on up to the top here, as they're pushing from the top, and you've got your head chucked onto your workbench real good, you can maneuver it and push it right out. So we'll go ahead and set that up, and we'll be right back and show you how to do that. Okay, so I got my helper here, and what she's going to do is push from the top, and we'll pull on the bottom here and see if we can get this thing out. So go ahead, and you'll be surprised how much that actually helps. Your screwdriver, if you've got a good strong thin one, will probably penetrate some of the silicone, but as long as you keep it in one hole, okay, go ahead and stop pushing. You can go ahead and get that mold out. We'll go ahead and show it from here. Okay, let me grab the camera real quick. And as you can see, it's coming right out, and I kind of stabbed it in the back, but that's the price of doing business. All right, so we got the mold out, and so we can take a look at our work. And so I'm not sure if you can see the texture here, but there is a like an impression of the 60 and 40 grit paper rolls that we use to clean up the port. So if we look at the port, this would be the cylinder wall side, right? And so we'll flip this around so the cylinder wall side comes over here. You can see that there is work that I did on the cylinder wall side. I've raised the roof a little bit here. And as that roof is raised and brought around, it's also that cylinder side wall just a little bit has been increased in its width. Let's take a look at probably one of the most important pieces is the transition from the port into the valve seat. The 3-angle valve job would be down here. And so you can see that there's no notches or bumps or weird choke points from over here would be the port itself into the this 3-angle valve job. So that's a win. That's pretty good. Maybe on the back side here I could do a little bit better cleaning up. Like that would be the short side radius back here. And looking at it, it looks like I've got just a little bit of a high point in the port ceiling on the cylinder wall side of the mold. So these molds are excellent to gauge your work, and I would recommend doing one of the do one port and do the best you can, and then take a mold of it and you can see where you can even do a better job. This piece here is the valve, let's see, that would be the rocker arm boss, stud boss, and it just kind of hung on and it's up in there, but I'll have to clean it out. But yeah, and you can see even there, I don't know if you can get the shadow, but the rocker arm guide boss, even after I tried to push it back, there is still a little indentation, meaning there is some port wall that's pushed into the port itself. So I could even take this the sanding roll and bring this out a little bit wider as well, just to match the width of the natural port size. So there's that. I'd call that successful. The only hole that we have in this thing, or the damage to the port itself, or to the mold itself, was when I put the screwdriver in at the bottom. And so, yeah, it's damaged, but it's not bad. I mean, you can definitely get an idea of how your short side radius flows. These LS cylinder heads are amazing, and they follow a very close relationship to the LSX and the racing heads. So yeah, hard to improve on them, but there is some stuff you can do, especially if you want to grab extra horsepower. So all right, well, so I had both ports flow tested, and I had the exhaust port flow tested as well, because we're going to go ahead and port that one as well. Here's our 2.3, obviously, and here's our 219 intake valve. So as we zoom in here and take a look, the flow numbers from my buddy Jack at Valley Performance, he stated that probably lost some flow due to the fact of the valve shrouded. In other words, when the valve opens, there's not a whole lot of air or area for the air to move around the valve into the combustion chamber, where the 2.19, as it opens up, does have more area from the valve, there we go, the valve edge to the wall. So what I'm going to do is try to make up for a little bit of the inefficiencies down low with a little bit of porting and work in the combustion chamber here. So go ahead and get all my tools out, grab a cigar, and we're going to get to work. So you can see how large the 2.3 valve comes out here to the valve seat, and I had him put a 4-angle valve job on here. And so where this valve seat comes in to the actual cylinder head, even in the stock configuration, I'll get some light to show you that in a minute, but the this bowl here area is quite far back, so this is actually reducing the amount of air that can flow through to the valve, and then as the valve opens, this here can restrict, because it isn't this bowl isn't far enough back for the most efficient flow, because our seat is bigger than the bowl itself. So we're going to take our bowl, push it back so it's at least as big as the seat, and even blend that maybe a little bit more into the seat. And you can see over here as well, let me use a pen, this part here, it looks like it's got a good transition, but we'll smooth that out a little bit, and then again bring that bowl right out to that seat. And in the stock configuration, same kind of story. Valve seats here, the bowl kind of runs, kind of ramps in back towards the valve stem boss. So again, we're going to port this one too, and I'm going to try to do just as good a job on this as I do on our 2.3, and after porting, we'll be able to have a very good indication of what a stock valve head will do after some work, and then a 2.3. Really, my goal is to see if I can pick up flow under the 0.4 of an inch lift. That low lift flow is what I lost, and so with a little bit of work and massaging, I hope to improve the outcome. Hopefully I can beat the 2.19 intake valve, but if I don't, well, that's fine too. At least we've got some good data here and not just hearsay from forums. So anyway, let's get to it. All right, so let's talk about tools. Got our grinder here, cheap grinder, 60 grit, half-inch rolls, 60 grit, 3/8 rolls, carbide burrs, wrenches, cute little light that'll sneak in there, help illuminate. I've got my shop vac that has a radiator hose attachment, so you can stick this in here, right? And as I'm grinding, it pulls all those shavings out, so I don't have to eat them or get them in my eyes. And I got a good old-fashioned, whatever, 16-gallon, 6.5 horse vacuum cleaner. I do have a variable speed power thing that allows me to obviously vary the amount of juice that goes to my drill, grinder, whatever the name escapes me. What is this thing? Die grinder. So that way, because this thing, if you plug it right into the wall, it'll take right off, and if you've got a carbide bit on it, it's just a little too much RPMs. Sometimes it'll blow the rolls away too from too much speed. So I can back that thing down and get the right RPM, and yeah, and that'll do it. So we'll start grinding away and get to where we got to be. All right, so we're getting some porting done here, and as you can see from the shiny bits, that's where I've been running the sanding rolls to clean up the port. Ooh, here we go. So this here, this bowl here, we've pushed this bowl back with the sanding discs to almost parallel with the valve seat here. Almost, not quite, but we pushed this back, and as you can see, as this transitions around on both sides, there is work. Let me put a light in there on those walls. So there's a little bit of light, so you can see that as this bowl transitions to the actual port here, this has been pushed back a little bit. Then on this side, we've done the same thing. The bowl here transitions to the port, and is a lot better flow. Now when we come onto when we show the old one, there's quite a choke point from the bowl to where it transitions to the port itself back here. There's a bunch of meat right here that can be taken out. And on the other side, same kind of situation. The bowl comes around, and then there's a big chunk of meat here that chokes the flow as well. So, coming back to our polished side, also you can notice that I didn't mess with the the valve guide boss very much. Usually you gain flow with that at higher lifts, and I'm only going to be doing 498 lift on my camshaft, so I just smoothed this out. But what I did do is on this side, on this roof side, this is the high velocity side, I'd call it, or the most flow comes, a lot of the flow comes out of here. When it starts way back here and comes around, the flow circles out this way because of the combustion chamber. So most of the air will come out here, or a lot of the air will come off of this side of the port, which is the cylinder wall port side, and it will come out and circle, right, which will make the air-fuel mixture homogeneous. So this side has a lot of velocity, and you can tell because of this dam that I left in here, or this piece of metal that's left. It's a shear dam, I believe it's called, and so if there's any air and fuel on this side that gets separated, or I'm sorry, if there's any fuel that gets separated from the air, it'll hit this dam, shear down, and then get caught up in the counterclockwise, at least from this angle, counterclockwise action of airflow. So this side definitely has a lot of velocity as it comes down this side of the port. So I did spend a little bit of time. I didn't make it bigger so much or try to make this side bigger, but I did put more effort with my sanding roll on this side of the port and this wall as well. So this will be this side of the port as it comes around and circles into the cylinder to fill. Alright, so did some work on the combustion chamber. You can see here that it's shiny for one. Number two, which will help reflect heat and energy back on top of the piston. But in here you can see that this has been pushed back into this meat here of the cylinder head itself. So I'm trying to unshroud the valve, so as the valve opens up it has more area for the flow to come out into the cylinder instead of being obstructed. I worked this back side here, and I also knocked a little bit off here because as the valve opened up, this had some shrouding as well. Here's the stock guy, and that's what I've brought back. So this all looks pretty cool here, but let's go ahead and put the valve in and check it out. So my brand new valve became my sacrificial valve for grinding, but you can see there is more distance from that valve to the cylinder wall. So I'm going to go ahead and give her a little pop here. You can also see there's more flow area here and around the back side. Alright, so I'm going to put a little zip tie on my valve, put it in here, squish the valve down. Then the lift on my cam is 498, so I'm going to put that in my mic. Then I'm going to set my valve height and take a look at how my porting looks at my max lift of my camshaft. Alright, so I got that set in 498, and so you can look and see that we've got a lot more clearance from the valve to the combustion chamber face. Look on the back here, quite a bit more distance from that valve to the cylinder head wall. And on this back side, I can get it so it doesn't reflect. You can see there is quite a bit more room for that air to come out on this back side. So I'm pretty happy with those changes. Again, I could do the whole combustion chamber, which would probably help on horsepower, but this is a horsepower per dollar or a horsepower per hour video. I'm trying to get the most bang for my buck for my camshaft lift and my operating range for the engine, which is probably a max of 5,000 RPMs. So I think we're pretty good here. We'll keep on moving on, and I'm going to go ahead and make these same changes comparatively speaking, to the 2.19 combustion chamber valve, or sorry, 2.19 valve in this combustion chamber, and see if it's worth it to put these 2.3s in with the same changes made to the 2.19 cylinder here. And we'll figure that all out here quick. So I'm going to get back to work. Alright, exhaust side now. Taking a look at this stock chamber, even after the heads were cleaned up, still looks like there's a lot of carbon buildup. Probably or likely because of the inefficient chamber here, or the this boss. You can see with this. Don't have enough hands. I need one more arm here. But you can see inside here that this is machined kind of wonky. It's got a lot of pokey edges, and it looks like there's some steps and some inefficiencies in here. So really my idea would be to, again, make the bowl come out close to the valve seat, take out these edges on the bottom of this valve guide boss, and then not work so much on the valve guide boss, not so much on the back, but just probably smooth it so the flow will come up and around this valve guide a lot more efficiently. So that's going to be the mission statement, and we'll see what the flow numbers say. Alright, so here we go with the exhaust side of town. You can see that I've did the bowl work. I've pushed the bowl back, got rid of a lot of the steps and weird casting marks that are inside it, and I also polished the or removed some material from both sides of the guide boss, and then just a little bit on top here, so when the exhaust you light off the combustion and the exhaust comes flying out, it'll have a smooth flow out through the port. So we'll look at the old one. You can see that there'd be definitely a lot more obstructions to flow with the original casting, with this big flat piece that directly impedes flow out of the combustion chamber. A couple steps and edges, and you can see the carbon there. Not a whole lot of room on both sides of the guide boss. And so we'll come on back again. You can see how things have smoothed. Didn't try to re-engineer anything, just trying to make flow smooth the flow on the way out. So we'll take a look here too. And you can see right from this way as well. Didn't try to take a ton of the guide boss out, just trying to smooth the flow. Again, depends on how much time you want to spend on these things, but I think for my application and for where I want the exhaust valve and flow for my camshaft, I think this will do me just fine. So again, we'll check out the flow numbers and see what's up.
So here we go. Gen 7 heads, 2.19 valve versus the 2.3 valve stock ports. This was the very first flow test I had done. And you could see that the 2.19 valve outlined in blue is the better choice when we're looking at the stock ports. The 2.3 valve did not flow as well. And then when we hit 500ths lift, it looks like it appears to be the port is the... It doesn't matter what you do to the valve, the port is maxed out. So 2.19 is better than 2.13 in this specific situation. So what else can we gain from this? No, don't really need to get a camshaft bigger than 500ths lift unless you're going to be doing some cylinder head porting. So go ahead and make your decisions based on port flow for your camshaft. So here we go, 2.19 ported versus unported valves. So all of these flow tests, all of the valves have had a 4-angle valve job. So
had to do that just to get the intake valves to seal to the ports because they were beat up. So first off, that's going to help low lift flow anyway. So we're going to go ahead and put that with the porting job. And you can see that porting the Gen 7 heads with the 2.19 valve gets us to 300 CFM airflow. And you can see here where at about 500ths lift, the stock heads flatten off, but the ported heads are climbing. And that takes us to about 600ths lift. Again, guess I forgot to describe my chart here. This is valve lift at the bottom, and then up here is the CFM flow in relation to the valve lift. So this is a winner here. So here's the answer. Without watching the rest of the video, the best dollar per horsepower 8.1 package is the ported cylinder head with the 2.19 valves and the 4-angle valve job. Airflow through those cylinder heads should support somewhere between 600 636 horsepower, depending on if you're going to do a roller hydraulic or hydraulic flat tappet camshaft. So we'll go ahead and look at the 2.3 valve ported versus the 2.3 valve in the stock cylinder head. And you can see that the 2.3 valve does enjoy the port work, and it did pick up just a little bit more on the high end of the valve lift in CFM flow. So here's the ported 2.19 versus the ported 2.3 valve. And interesting enough, if you look at the 2.19, you pick up a lot of low lift flow, which is critical, in my opinion, to a street engine. I'll discuss that in a second. But right about 375 lift here, switches over. The 2.3 valve seems to be carrying up and carrying a little bit more lift, or I'm sorry, flow per lift. Now your low lift flow here, why this is critical is for many reasons to get airflow going. If you can imagine a train sitting on the tracks, when the engine starts to pull, it pulls one car, which pulls the second car, which pulls the third car, which pulls the fourth car. And so that chain of events, airflow does stick together. And so with the more airflow you can get moving at the low lifts, the more total airflow you're going to pull at the bottom or at the top end, because you've drug that air around the valve and the valve seat. So low lift flow, a lot of that's influenced by valve jobs. We've got a 4-angle valve job here, and the 2.19 valve is definitely better in this piece. So this is my decision, which I would, if I was, or when I build another 8.1, going to keep the 2.19 valves in. So let's talk about a comparison between other cylinder heads. This data is all easily found online. I had a set of pocket ported my peanut port heads from a 454 I had in a boat. And so this is the 088 rectangular port heads, which are the were a big choice on the early Mark IVs, Mark IV big blocks. Here's the Edelbrock E Street heads, which are in a more inexpensive cylinder head in stock form. And this is the ported 8.1s in 2.19 valve in blue. And you can see of all of the cylinder heads, at least from my data, we're pulling a lot more low lift flow. And that low lift flow carries all the way up to 500ths lift, where the rectangular port heads pretty much take over at 500ths lift to 600ths. So what can we draw from this data? Hey, but why not buy a 8.1 for $1,000 or $1,200? Because you've already got pretty darn good cylinder heads, and they'll support 600 horse. That's enough said there. And this data here is 2.19 ported, 2.19 unported, 2.3 ported, and 2.3 unported. And this is just what it looks like with all of the iterations of the Gen 7 cylinder head. 2.3 valve stock ports is the biggest loser. And then the 2.19 port here in red, stock ports. And then again, you can see how the 2.19 ported intake comes up to about 375 lift of the camshaft or the valve, and then the 2.3 ported cylinder head takes over from there. So this is some a Excel document I put together by reading David Vizard and another cylinder head book. I can't remember which one, but it had some functions in there. You throw some data in, and it gives you some horsepower predictions. They're quick and dirty, so don't hold me to it. But we're pulling 305 CFM through the 2.19 ported heads. It's going to equate to about 605 horsepower with a hydraulic flat tappet cam. Roller cam's going to put us approximately 641. Superflows function. Looks like I got 303 here. Close enough. Gets you to about 630 horsepower. So this is an interesting thing too I found from the Superflow from a book that this gives you the RPM based on your displacement per cylinder where your peak horsepower is actually going to be found. So with 300 CFM of 303 CFM and a 62 the displacement 62 cc cylinder, your RPMs where your peak horsepower is going to be 5,845. So I think that's interesting, because if you're going to spin this big block and you're going to go ahead and stick with a 2.19 valve because it's the best, in my opinion, overall flow, then I believe valve train stability is going to be one of your targets, right? Good springs, good retainers, possibly good studs, and then maybe some lighter valves. So this is all good data here. So then this is another estimation, and this is a hydraulic flat tappet cam versus a hydraulic roller cam. These data points, I equated those to horsepower. So at 0.2, so 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, the CFM flow and how much horsepower that equates to as it comes up. Again, this is an estimation, so please don't write in the in the chat that I don't know what I'm talking about, because this is again, we're just estimating things here, and when we get it on the dyno, that's truly the only real way to measure horsepower, and even then the racetrack's the only dyno that matters. So hopefully this will just help guide some decisions on where you're gonna take your big block. All right, so we're inside today. We're gonna make some RTV silicone molds of our intake ports. We're gonna go ahead and mix these two together, pour it into this cup, and let it drain through a hole, so that way it gets all the air bubbles out. We're gonna pour it into these three intake ports. This is our stock port, the 2.3 valve port, and then the 2.19 valve port. These two ports should be very similar, at least as similar as I could get it. And then the stock port here. So once we get these silicone molds pried out, we'll be able to visually distinguish and hopefully get a better idea of why different ports flow better, and we can hopefully take those lessons and apply them to future porting. So we'll get started here. Okay, so I went ahead and stirred this up, the white part, and then you're supposed to mix it by weight, but you either pour all this in there or weigh it out. So I'm just going to pour it all in and see what happens. I've shaken this up as well. So okay. Try not to add air to the mixture when you're mixing it up. But I mean, you know, hey, we do the best we can. Okay, so I've got this mixed up, and so I'm going to go ahead and pour it into this cup. Ooh. Okay, so the two most important ports I want to get is the stock one and the 2.19, because this was the best flowing port under 375 lift. And I'm more, for a street engine, I like a lot of low lift flow versus a ton of high lift flow. Camshaft or the valve spends more time open below its maximum lift. So this is the port I'm interested in, and the stock. So I've got this mess all ready to go. We'll pull this back and let it all fill in. Ooh. Okay, so I went ahead and mixed up another batch. So that's 2 batches of the RTV silicone to get about that much done. This is the 2.3 port. I didn't do a whole lot of work to the outside here anyway, so I guess I'm not too heartbroken about it. This is my port that I'm most happy with, again, because of the low lift flow. So got those together, zip ties on the valves to keep them in, and I don't see any blue leaking out the other side. So by tomorrow I'll have some very nice silicone molds of these ports, and I can take a look at them and we'll discuss it when they come out of the oven. So catch you then. Okay, so I went ahead and mixed up another batch. So that's 2 batches of the RTV silicone to get about that much done. This is the 2.3 port. I didn't do a whole lot of work to the outside here anyway, so I guess I'm not too heartbroken about it. This is my port that I'm most happy with, again, because of the low lift flow. So got those together, zip ties on the valves to keep them in, and I don't see any blue leaking out the other side. So by tomorrow I'll have some very nice silicone molds of these ports, and I can take a look at them and we'll discuss it when they come out of the oven. So catch you then. Okay, so here's our silicone or RTV all set up. And we just got to pop our valves out. Start prying that mold out of there. There we go. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is take a screwdriver and separate this RTV from the cylinder intake port sides, so that way you can actually push it out. And it is not easy to do. Let me just tell you, it is a lot of work. So this is just a pain, really, but it's pretty cool. Okay, so what I like to do is make sure you got like a round screwdriver so you don't mung anything up or beat anything up. And you can use silicone spray. WD-40 seems to work real good. So just kind of move this thing away from the cylinder walls. Pop some lube in here up top. Then the easiest way that I found to do it is to take a wooden mallet end and then the round the round screwdriver. Get in here, give it a little tug on top, push down from the top, and bring it out. If you got a buddy that can help, it's worth it. Whew. Got it. There it is. Woohoo! Alright, so let's take a look here at our intake ports, molds, and this is the stock mold. Alright, so as we're taking a look at it from the top view here, you can see that the cylinder head, the roof of the port comes down and cuts into the port here by where the bolt comes in, the rocker stud bolt. As we're looking, and we're taking a look at this, you can see how this comes through. It's really kind of hard to see, but this port like kind of chokes in here. I think I probably spoke about it in the video where this port comes out like this and then cuts in and then comes out again. There you can kind of see it right here into the bowl. Also notice that the short side radius of the port, in other words the back here, how much of a right or a tight angle this is. You want this more like stretched out, right? You don't want it as tight like a 90-degree angle, because this disrupts flow and it reduces the smooth airflow and the homogeneous mixture of air and fuel together. So looking around, and you can also see how the intake port, the bowl, how much the bowl tightens in before it hits the valve seat. Kind of hard to see with this, the back of the valve sitting here, but that's a pretty good view. This comes in and then it bumps out. Okay. So let's see how we did. This is the 2.19 port. This was the best all-around port. And you can see that the rocker stud ended up right here. So the bolt came into the port just a little bit. Well, you can also see that this roof was brought up and then it transitions down. You can see that the bowl smoothly goes into the valve, and even here you'll notice that there is an indentation from the bowl of the port here as it hits the back of the valve. So even this part here, we could have opened this up a little more. Looking at the short side radius, okay, it's still pretty abrupt, but it is less abrupt than the original port, so we did a better job on that. And you can see on the roof here, as this comes down, we raised this just the smallest amount to allow more port flow into here, and we also did the same with the other side. You can see that the roof comes down, stays smooth, stays high, and then transitions into the bowl. You still see the casting lines where the original port was. Again, I wasn't trying to take out a ton of meat. I wasn't trying to remake the wheel. So that's a good sign that we still see some of that. It does get lost in here, but that's where we're transitioning from the port itself to the turn here, and then back into the bowl. So how did we do versus the 2.3 valve? Alright, it's going to be extremely hard to see, so you're just going to have to take my word for it. If we look at the bowl itself, you can see I did a much better job from the port as it transitions into the bowl to the valve, the back of the valve here at the valve seat. This is a much better, smoother and more open bowl than our 2.19 port. Bing. On top, I also took a little bit more meat out of the roof, and then this long side, I call it the long side of the runner. I did raise the cylinder head, the cylinder port roof just a bit more. And it's definitely hard to see, but you can see the smoothness of that 60 grit paper versus the the very aggressive or very rough stock casting. Okay, not a whole lot of casting marks except for back here. I did try to smooth that out and bring this wall further out this way to better flow into the bowl, and the same with the other side. The port sealing, you can see that this is the rocker arm stud again. There's plenty of threads into the cylinder head to retain the rocker arm stud. So I like this port better. I like the porting job better. I think that it's smoother, and I think it's bigger where it needs to be. This one flowed better at low lift. I think that has a lot to do with the valve size and the amount of velocity that it keeps versus just port size. So before I put the heads on, I'll probably just try to do a better job of smoothing everything, keeping an eye on this short side radius, trying to smooth that out a little bit more, and doing a good job of transitioning the bowl into the back of the valve or the valve seat. Okay, so again, this was the stock port. Now these things are really great to make. These molds are kind of a pain, but they become a library as well. So what helps guide me is, back a while ago I had rebuilt a LSX or two, and so I had taken some port moldings from the LSX 454. So a very good set of high performance heads, and I'll use this as guidance with the the cylinder roofs, trying to transition the short side radius. But even this one in stock form could have used a little bit of work. Could have used a little bit of work from the port into the valve seat area. But again, it keeps the that shear dam or whatever it's called. I should probably Google it, but so I kept that shear piece in all of the porting that I did. Had a nice smooth tall transition down the port on that side, so again tried to keep that in my port. And there are some good similarities here between these two cylinder heads. So, and here is a LT1 direct injection port, and you can definitely see the difference in the short side radius, right, the back. I mean, how aggressive this is, even the LSX head, how aggressive this turn is. And these direct injection intake ports are very smooth. They don't have much of a 90-degree turn at all. So these are some serious flowing cylinder heads too. Again, from another rebuild or something I had going on, I took this and took a mold of it. Now, to be the devil's advocate, we're going to look at the stock port here. Now there is some theory and some ideas that you'll see how this port kind of, we talked about earlier, how it like necks down and becomes tighter here. I have read where in stock applications where you neck this down, it becomes like a venturi. So in a venturi, the speed of the airflow slows down, but the velocity speeds up. So as the intake valve opens here and you have this venturi effect, you could see a higher air velocity inside this port, which smashes down right on the back side of that valve and helps atomization and the velocity of the air coming through. So in stock form and in standard RPM operating range for a standard truck, like on a standard day, probably an excellent idea. But I think we're going to start straight legging our hot rods a little more than what they planned on in stock. So there we go. So make yourself some molds and build yourself a library. I've got a box of them actually over here. Port jobs that I've done. So that way you can refer to it and keep on getting better. That's what we're trying to do, right? Better and better.